Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into the 2025 IBPS RRB Scale 2 GBO exam. We're going to break down the entire paper and turn that analysis into an actionable guide, a real game plan for your preparation.
Okay, so let's get right to it. The big question on every candidate's mind. Just how challenging was this year's paper, really?
So here's how we're going to tackle this. We'll start with a high-level overview, then we'll drill down into each and every section, reasoning, quant, you name it, and then we'll wrap it all up with an actionable mission plan that you can use.
All right, first things first, let's get a clear situation report, a 30,000-foot view of the exam's overall difficulty. We need this high-level intel before we dive into the nitty-gritty.
So what did we see? Well, based on feedback from folks who actually took the exam, it was pretty consistent across the board. Reasoning, quant, and financial awareness all landed squarely in that moderate zone. The only sections that were a little more forgiving were language and computer knowledge. So, the crucial point here, the big takeaway, is that this was not some overwhelmingly difficult paper. It was a moderate challenge, which means it demanded really balanced preparation and a steady hand during the exam. No huge surprises, which tells you a solid, well-rounded strategy was the absolute key to success.
Okay, now let's see how this all played out in the first major section, reasoning. And let me tell you, this section presented a very specific kind of challenge. It wasn't about general aptitude, it was about conquering one particular type of question.
And check this out. This is what's really fascinating. A full half, 50% of all the reasoning questions came from just one area, puzzles and seating arrangements. We're talking 20 out of 40 questions. That is a massive concentration on a single topic.
And this table just illustrates the exam's focus perfectly. We're not talking about simple run-of-the-mill puzzles either. The paper threw complex variations at you, like day and month-based puzzles with multiple variables, tricky circular arrangements, and even those uncertain seating arrangements. Your ability to crack these was, without a doubt, the single biggest test in this entire section.
All right, next up, quantitative aptitude. Candidates basically describe this as a battle against the clock. This section wasn't just about what you knew. It was about how fast you could actually execute on that knowledge. This single quote from test takers just captures the essence of the quant challenge perfectly, particularly time-consuming. It wasn't about not knowing the concepts. It was all about applying them under some serious, intense time pressure. This is where all that practice and time management really paid off. And you can see it right here, visually. The section was split almost perfectly into three key areas. A huge chunk, 15 questions, came from data interpretation, your bar graphs, pie charts, and caselets. Another 15 were from pure speed math, approximation, number series, that kind of thing. And the last 10 questions came from those core arithmetic topics. To succeed here, you really had to be a master of all three domains. Okay, let's pivot a bit. Let's talk about the sections where you could really build a strong scoring foundation: language and computer knowledge. Think of these as your scoring opportunities, where solid preparation could give you a huge return on your time investment.
So on one side, you had the English section, rated easy moderate, and it was built on all the standard topics you'd expect, including 2 separate reading comprehension passages. Then on the other side, computer knowledge, also easy moderate, but it covered a super broad syllabus, everything from fundamentals like MS Office to specifics like network topologies and the difference between IPv4 and IPv6. Bottom line, these 2 sections were your best shot at scoring efficiently.
Now for financial awareness. Look, just reading a simple list of topics isn't enough. That's not going to cut it. We need to group the intel into themes to make it actually useful. By spotting the patterns in the questions, we can prepare way more effectively.
So, the first major theme, the first cluster of questions, was all about the RBI. It revolved heavily around the Monetary Policy Committee's decisions and core economic indicators. Questions on the repo rate, CPI projections, even Basel norms. It all points to a clear focus on the central bank's actions.
The second key theme was a super deep dive into government schemes. And notice the level of detail they're expected here. We're talking specific investment limits for schemes like PPF, the exact premium amounts for PMSBY, and even the annual interest rate for sovereign gold bonds. They wanted you to know the specifics.
All right, the third theme was all about practical banking operations and regulations. The real bread and butter of banking. The questions focused on rules that affect day-to-day stuff, like the full form of IFSC, what a crossed check means, and the timeline for paying out unclaimed deposits.
And finally, there was a very specific focus on the RBI's consumer protection framework, in particular, the Integrated Ombudsman Scheme. They wanted to know the exact launch month and year, the location of the new complaint center, and even the monetary limit on disputes. This really shows how important recent RBI initiatives are.
So, after all that analysis, what does this all mean for you? Let's boil this all down into a clear, concise mission plan for your preparation. This is where we turn all that intelligence into action.
So here it is, your 4-point mission plan. First, you have got to dominate puzzles and data interpretation. They're non-negotiable. Second, train for speed, especially in quant. Third, go secure those foundational marks in English and computers. And finally, study financial awareness thematically. Trust me, this approach will give your prep structure and a laser-like focus.
Look, at the end of the day, this entire analysis is a tool. It's the intel. The most important question is the one you have to answer. How will you use this intel to build a smarter, more targeted preparation strategy? The blueprint is right here. The next move is all yours.